Welcome to the Dynamics 365 Practice Show. In this episode, we explore dynamics and business development with Nick Spallitta. Nick joined Spallitta Group after more than 15 years of experience in sales, consulting, and leadership roles. Nick is a complex problem solver and enjoys helping customers find pragmatic solutions to achieve success. Prior to that, Nick was part of the CRM practice leadership team at Hitachi Solutions and has also worked with Sonoma Partners. To review the show notes for this episode, please go to nz365guide.com/70. Now, let's have a chat with Nick. Welcome to the MVP Show. I'm here with Nick. Nick, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, Mark. My name is Nick Spallitta. I work for a Microsoft partner called the Procure Group that focuses on the intersection of AI and business applications. We help our clients drive a better customer employee experience with Microsoft and open source technologies.
Okay, so tell me, where are you from? Tell me a bit about your family background, that type of thing, and how you got to this point in your career.
Yeah, sure, certainly. So I live about 10 minutes away from where I grew up here in Kansas City. So lots of friends and family in the area. Pretty much eating and drinking with them is probably my favorite pastime. I've also lived in a couple other cities and been in sales and consulting my entire career. So I've visited a lot of places and on way too many plane rides. So I'm also fortunate to have a lot of friends kind of scattered all over the world. You know, pretty much outside of work, most of my time is spent hanging out with my wife and two children. I also enjoy pretty much anything outdoors, hiking, skiing, fishing, hunting, climbing. I used to read a lot, Mark. Now that's mostly books on tape because I don't have enough time for just that. And then as far as the Dynamics career and kind of what got me started there, I've been really lucky, Mark. I started out in the Microsoft channel almost a decade ago. I co-founded a SharePoint and custom application development company when I moved back to Kansas City. During that time, I got a chance to work with Microsoft Dynamics 3.0 on a large government project we were doing some subcontracting work for that was also involved SharePoint. And that was really my first introduction to Dynamics, and I hated it. I really didn't like 3.0 at all.
Yeah, it was a rough product back then.
Yeah. I mean, how long have you been working with Dynamics, Mark? I mean, were you one of the brave souls that started prior to 3.0?
1.2.
Oh, yeah, you deserve a medal.
I was a customer of it. I implemented as a customer.
Oh, wow, you were brave.
Mm-hmm.
So after that venture, I ended up joining a good company called Sonoma Partners. I don't know if you're familiar with them. I know
them very well, yeah.
Great people. They'd written the Microsoft 4.0 press books and were writing the ones for the upcoming 2011 release. That was, a really big transition time for Microsoft and just the Dynamics CRM platform as a whole. It was also kind of Microsoft's first attempt at a cloud-based business application. So interesting times to say the least, and a lot of fun. Shortly after that, I got another opportunity to work with some more great people at Hitachi to help them build a CRM practice and join their leadership team. We grew really quickly there, both organically and through some acquisitions. We won quite a few different awards and got to do a lot of cool things for a lot of great customers. So, I mean, like I said, Mark, I mean, I've been really blessed to have gotten to work with and for some really talented people in our Dynamics channel.
So tell us a bit about Spallitta Group. How's that been set up? I see that your business partner is the wonderfully talented singer-songwriter, architect extraordinaire, MVP, Sheila Shapari. So tell us about how you guys kind of formed this business and what's the plans?
Yeah, so, I mean, first and foremost, you're absolutely spot on about Sheila. She's an amazing talent, especially when it comes down to Microsoft Dynamics CRM. And obviously she has other talents in terms of singing and songwriting and things of that nature. But for me, this isn't necessarily my first time kind of with the entrepreneurship thing, if you will. I really just kind of enjoy helping, a team and a company grow quickly. And when you start it, with a small group of people or a few folks, you have an opportunity to move a lot faster. You can experiment. You can find a better way of doing things a lot easier than you can, working, with a larger existing business. It's also a really challenging thing to do, Mark. I think you've done it before too. So, I mean, it just helps you grow faster as a person. And then the other reason why I did it is just I'm really bullish right now on where Microsoft is heading overall, right? And really just looking to kind of hook our little trailer up to to that to see where it takes everyone. And then also at the same time, there's been a lot of change and consolidation in the partner channel. And that's created a lot of different opportunities for different people. And I want to take advantage of that.
Yeah, nice. So, one of the themes of the show is really around dynamics and business development. So tell me, you've started a new business, new company, and of course the big thing is landing your clients and also, building your client mix over the next 2 to 5 years. If you like to start with, you've got all your old connections, but at some point you've got to start, developing brand new business because all your relationships kind of get exhausted. And if you like, they've transferred over to you or whatever project wise, how do you go about, kind of getting those sales/marketing rhythms in place?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think it all starts with just market segmentation and focus. I think, in my experience, when I start looking at any kind of marketing, sales, or service related problem to go solve it, it always kind of starts with that segmentation. And what I mean by that is you need to have that focus. I mean, even the larger Microsoft Dynamics partners like HCL, Avanade, Hitachi have a hard time being all things to all people, right? So it's kind of ignorant, to think you can do everything well for your customers, even if you have all the resources that like maybe a big shop has, right? So I think that's the first thing that you got to go do is you have to start by defining what your ideal customer or prospect looks like. And in our world, that usually boils down to kind of the following data points. Markets, it's industry, right? So I also think that you need to go as deep as possible. It's just not sufficient anymore to say you're a thin serve focused partner. That just simply doesn't cut it. Verticals such as sales, customer service, or field service, and growing kind of a level of expertise there is another way to focus. You can certainly do it based on geography, right? So, I mean, if you're from Kansas City, then you're probably not going to be a good fit for someone that wants to implement D365 in Germany, German language. Right. Size is also, a good way of kind of carving it up. Usually that's defined by employees or revenue. And then, I would say technology profiles is another side of it too. Are they a Microsoft shop or do they use Google Apps? I mean, I don't know about you, Mark, but I haven't implemented D365 with a lot of customers that are also using Google Apps.
No, none. Okay, so you had their technology, size, geography, you covered verticals, and then do you specialize in, if you like, one of the first-party apps like field service, customer services, sales, and industry? So that's kind of like, that's how you define your ideal customer profile, is that right?
Yeah, so I would say you got to look at those things. Those are the attributes, right? So, if you're looking at, specializing in, capital markets, investment banking, and more specifically the sales side of that, right? And then you want to do that in kind of the Midwest, and you want to do that for, companies that, are in between 250 million and let's call it 750 billion. And then there's an employee bracket to that too. And then there's a technology profile. You can start using all of those various attributes to go find customers. I would also say you got to bring it, even a level down from that, right? So, I mean, we're talking about attributes to accounts, and we don't sell to companies, we sell to people. So you've also got to kind of drill down into the various different buying personas, right? So, are you directing your message towards IT leadership, or maybe that customer or contact center leader, right? Or the VP of sales, sales operations, all of those folks. And then basically once you kind of have your focus and your message and you've aligned your value propositions to that, then you need to really start kind of putting that message through all of the various channels that those buying personas, if you will, or those buying influences, might be able to find you or find information about you on.
Okay, so let's talk about findability, on those channels. What have you found is the most effective and maybe even the second most effective when it comes to people being able to find you and your products and service and things like that? Yeah,
good question. I would say, LinkedIn is a good way. There's a lot of folks that are out there kind of doing that. But, I would say primarily just putting good content out, right? Making sure that you're you're spending some time providing value to these buyer personas or these buying influences, and just maybe educating them or giving them some information that they might not have had unless they kind of look through some of your content, that type of stuff. I think that starts to build your credibility, and then also kind of builds a little bit of goodwill, if you will, with these folks. And then, that awareness gets created. So when you do pick up the phone and call, or you run into them at an event or something of that nature, then there's a little bit of familiarity. And I think that's the key, right? People keep saying cold calling is dead, and really it's because there's not a lot of familiarity there, right? If I call Mark up, with Mark never even, have heard my name or my company's name, I'm not going to get very far. But if I call Mark and Mark recognizes, that, hey, I downloaded some information that was helpful to me, or I went to a blog to go solve a problem and it was a Spallitta group or something like that, then that familiarity helps quite a bit.
Yeah. Yeah. So you kind of, rather than cold calling, they're a well warmed up call. You've had a few touch points with them before you're ever kind of maybe engaging with them over the phone.
Yeah, you have to have some form of familiarity. And like you mentioned too, those of us that have been around for some time, we've got a strong network and a lot of customers that we work with. But yeah, that familiarity is key.
Yeah. So do you go after business pretty much within your own geo, or do you kind of work anywhere across the US in how you, if you like, based on the target customer type you go after?
Yeah, anywhere in the U.S. So, I'm based in Kansas City, and Sheila's based in Denver, and our consultants are a little bit scattered, a little bit everywhere, if you will. But so are our customers. So, our customers are in New York, Chicago, San Francisco, Texas. So, I think for us, it's really got to be kind of a U.S. focus, because our focus is kind of pretty laser sharp on those verticals too. So yeah, we'd love to have more business in our backyard, less travel, right? But it's really US focused.
Yeah. So how did you niche down and choose those? Like I notice that you're in Augmented Intelligence in its relationship to automation with D365. What kind of set you on the niche that you're operating in?
Yeah, so, first and foremost, artificial intelligence, right, as most people call it, is a huge thing, right? It's getting a lot of traction from a buzzword perspective. For us, we like to think of it as kind of augmented intelligence, and really kind of what we're talking about there is that, with machine learning and some of the cognitive services that Microsoft's providing, in addition to just kind of good old-fashioned analytics, we're able to do things and provide insights to the right people at the right time in a way that we haven't had or haven't been able to before, right? And then also, I think really our belief is what's much more important than these applications that we're all implementing is the data that they hold, right? That's the value. That's where the value is. So that's kind of really our focus is bringing kind of the analytics and kind of what we call augmented intelligence together with these business applications and finding that intersection.
Nice. So what's the toughest thing about starting a new practice like this?
Oh, wow. I think patience. I think that's the key. It takes time. It really takes time to build a great, solid practice. So I think that's probably the key, is just having some patience and making sure that you're continuing to do the right thing with the right team and the right customers. It's really, really easy to get off track there, in terms of, when you're a young company and hungry to do good work and stuff like that, sometimes you'll find yourself chasing things that, might not necessarily be good for you. So I think it's just patience and kind of having that level of maturity to focus on the right things.
Yeah. So patience is interesting, because patience in business always has a dollar value associated with it. So in other words, you can only be as patient as your cash flow or capital. So how does that kind of affect your decision-making process? I would say probably a more mature company would have a lot more ability to be patient than a potential startup, unless you're well capitalized, of course.
Sure. And even if you are well capitalized, you still have limited resources, right? You still got to make money. So I would say, again, absolutely you want to try to be true to who you are, even if you're not necessarily there yet. And if that means passing on business, then that might not lead to customer success or build that reputation you want from the company. You just got to be mature and do that. But to your point, working capital and cash, I mean, that's the business. That's what allows you to do more things, right? So, you really, I think first and foremost, you really want to kind of be obsessive about kind of, your current and future customers and making them successful. And then just after that, then you figure out how to make money doing that for you and the team. And you make sure that you monitor that cash and that working capital and you work within your means.
Yeah, nice. How do you kind of prioritize what needs to be done now as opposed to, what you might leave for 18-month, 2-year, 3-year type window when, getting a business up and cranking?
Maybe working capital and cash. So I think you've got to look at this thing in milestones, right? Because, based on my experience, you're solving different types of problems at different milestones, right? So, obviously there's always going to be, metrics that you want to track and things of that nature. But, getting, to 2.5 million in revenue is a lot different than going from 5 to 15 and even a lot different than going from 15 to 50. Yeah, again, all of those efforts bring different sets of challenges. So you kind of have to, I think if you're looking 4 to 5 years ahead, I mean, man, the world changes so fast these days. I mean, we're iterating on the platform. I mean, the platform iterates, changes significantly every 6 months these days. So I don't know who could ever have a 4 to 5 year plan.
Agreed. But it's kind of like, when I talk about prioritization, I'm talking about, priorities around things like you need to get your marketing rhythms in place or you need to get your sales rhythms in place, as opposed to perhaps making sure you've got the best HR system for, getting an HR director on or something like that because you're not at that size. Kind of, what do you, so kind of what
customers and talent.
Yeah, customers and talent. Yeah.
That's it. That's the secret sauce, right? So, I mean, anything that has to do with, acquiring, more customers and better customers or the ideal customers that you're looking for. And then on the same fold, anything that helps you, acquire great talent, that's what you got to go do.
Okay, let's talk about that then, the talent side of things. How do you attract, how do you find the right talent? Kind of, what's your thinking around contractors as opposed to full FTEs? How does that work without getting into, if you like, the nuances of the legal side of how the U.S. employment law runs?
Yeah, certainly. So first and foremost, the contractors versus FTEs thing, right? I would start by saying contractors don't really care. So if you're utilizing contractors or contract people, then they better be known entities. They better be people that are pretty much borderline friends, right? That really care about you and care about your customers. Because in most cases, if you're just selling work and just, throwing, contractors at it, that's never going to lead to customer success. So that's that. I think also in finding the right people or choosing the right people, I wish it kind of worked like a fantasy football draft where we could just, go
yes, sub them out if they're not right.
Yeah, and I think it kind of maybe does when you're doing kind of the college or offshore hiring type of thing, right? But, in this business, especially with the scarcity of talent, the right people choose you, Mark. So you have to cultivate that like you would an opportunity for a customer. You've got to build trust. You've got to show them why you're different. Got to qualify that they're right for you right now, and if you're growing a successful practice, you have to keep 2 pipelines, customers and talent.
Wow, that's cool. I like that. How do you measure your progress and success? Because what I'm meaning here is that in a way you don't have anybody else measuring you, so you've got to kind of put your own systems in place to a degree hold yourself accountable. How do you choose those and stay true to yourself, if you like?
Yeah, so good question. So, I mean, I think, with professional services companies, you're always going to have kind of the standard set of metrics that you need to track, right? So, billable utilization, bookings, all of that good stuff. You also, going back to that working capital and cash thing too. I mean, you even want to measure things like DSO, day sales outstanding, and just making sure that because that's the thing that everybody gets hung up on in our business is they don't understand kind of the time, right? So I think that's the big thing is you got to try and do your best to measure and manage your time effectively, and then just make sure that you have those milestones set out for your business and that you're tracking effectively to them, right? And that everything that you're doing kind of on a daily activity perspective, when you reflect on that, is leading towards those milestones. And it changes, right? It's a very fluid situation. Things, I would say if you've found yourself in a situation where, like for us, for example, where, we've been able to get a lot of business real quick, right? So that's a good thing. So, we've kind of overshot our original goals, but for us, that just means that, maybe we set the goal too low. So you've got to continually adjust based on those things and just continually to watch those common metrics that, everybody has to manage off of in a professional services business.
Yeah, nice. How do you go about setting the vision for your company and added to that, if you like, set the culture that your company is going to be known for, and if you like, that creates a loyalty within your staff?
Yeah, so creating that culture and that vision of what you want to be and what you want your company to be is pretty important. So for us, we typically so we operate off of what we call a lean business model canvas. I don't know if you're familiar with that, Mark. And we continually update that and review that, as an organization. I also feel that it's important to be transparent with that information to your employees, right? So I have no problem sharing that with our folks and our team in terms of what the grand plan is, and also getting their buy-in, and more importantly, getting their feedback on it, right? I think maybe without spending you kind of the next hour walking you through all of kind of what we did to create that lean business model. But, I think really what we try to do is just, again, keep it simple. I mean, I think that's for us at this stage, it's just try to do our best to keep it simple right now. It's so easy to overcomplicate this business. So it's really go get great customers, find great talent in parallel with that, do great work, and repeat that over and over again. Nice.
Now, some good advice there. So let's just, if you like, zoom back out, not just in the business you're in, but if you like, across your career and from working at Sonoma, Hitachi, and where you are now. How is your kind of the way you've done business, or what you define as good business, changed over time?
That's a great question. So I've always been very customer-centric, so that hasn't changed much. The way I help them has evolved with experience, of course. But I will say when I was younger, I was much more about, hey, look at me. Look what I can do, or what I just did. I was typically also in a role, Mark, where I had some sort of performance-based compensation. So I measured a lot of my early success by how much money I could make, or winning a big logo or a huge deal. Companies also usually measured me against my peers' performance, so I was very competitive. And now for me, it's all about what I do with my time and the team of people I do it with. I think that's the biggest change for me. These days, I like seeing other people win, especially people that deserve it. And helping play a role in making that happen is really just a lot of fun. It actually makes me quite happy.
Nice. Have you ever thought about getting into more the ISV side of business and creating products rather than being a system integrator, implementer?
Absolutely. I think if you're for our aspirations at very least, is not to necessarily be, a gigantic, global systems integrator like an Avanade or anything like that. That's not it. Really what we want to do is, start by really implementing, great solutions with great people for great customers. And I think along the way, if you're doing that the right way, then you'll get, a lot of smart, great people like the Sheilas of the world you get their minds and their eyes on problems that people are trying to solve. And once you solve that problem, you got to take a look at that and say, hey, could that be easily replicated for other people like this, right? And I think that's typically the best way to kind of start building products. We have kind of a little bit of an internal R&D list and some things that we're working on currently. But yeah, that's the best way to do it, is just, get in front of, some good customers, solve some problems, and see if you can productize that.
Excellent. No, it's interesting. I've got a keen interest in the ISV space, and I believe with the changes Microsoft have made, in the Power Platform and CDS for apps, I think it's opening up a massive opportunity scape for particularly, full line of business apps and vertical solutions to come to market that, could be quite transformative, not using anything that's in Dynamics, but purely built on the platform. So it's good to see that you're kind of looking at that area. Can you give me a walkthrough of your top recommendations for revenue generation?
Yeah. So, I think, with regards to the services side of the business, right? Because it's different. If you go into, once you start getting into product, your sales motions and how you generate revenue is going to change or evolve. And, I'd even recommend kind of separating that out as much as possible as your products evolve. But, I think my top recommendation is really to understand how lead to cash works in our business. I'm always caught off guard, Mark, by a lot of people not having a good handle on this. So I try to break it down and simplify it into 5 areas. The most important thing is to really understand kind of what drives healthy metrics in those various areas, and then even try to continuously improve those. So, first you've got your pipeline. That's kind of all the activity and potential opportunities, you might have with prospects or clients. This is kind of, what we talked about earlier when you're really trying to kind of identify and qualify opportunities, create awareness with value propositions and differentiators and, whatever you want to call it, right? And then you from there, you progress into what I call a bookings forecast. And that's pretty important too, because for a lot of us, we have limited resources. So, the opportunity cost for chasing the wrong business is very, very high, right? Because it takes key resources and a team to win any deal of any significance. And also the bookings forecast is important too, because that's how you plan for your resource needs in the future. So you got to really have a tight grasp on kind of what you're forecasting, because you're not necessarily just forecasting revenue. You're forecasting resources at that stage. And then once it turns into kind of bookings or backlog, everybody typically at that stage, they want to high five and say, congrats, we won, that type of thing. But that's just a signed piece of paper. It's not revenue at all, right? Nor does it even really guarantee it. So not until your team does the work and gets paid, is that revenue. So I would also recommend kind of, everybody tends to think marketing and sales and revenue generation, but sales to service transitions are really important, right? Setting your delivery team up and your service team up for success is absolutely critical. And then you get into kind of all the fun accounting stuff, right? So build revenue and all that good stuff, and measuring, making sure that, from the time you invoice a customer to, when you get paid and when it turns into actual revenue, you're measuring, you have a healthy DSO, the average of that's 43 days. So, if you think about 43 days just between build revenue and actual revenue, and then kind of what it takes your team to basically start working against that backlog or those bookings, right? And then, the sales cycle and the bookings forecast, or even, what it takes to get people into the pipeline in the first place, that's a lot of time, right? So I think really that's the key, is really just be cognizant of the time and kind of how revenue works in our world.
Yeah. Interesting. One of the things you mentioned there was around the opportunity cost of working with a potential opportunity that you sense is not going to land, but you're investing in it. How do you know when to pull the pin and walk away from a deal? Because even though it might be sensational to win it, there's signs that it's not going to happen early on. Let's say what I used to call column fodder. You're in column 2 and column 3 of their preferred list of suppliers, and they need to get 3, let's say prices ultimately. What do you look for that gives those signs that, hey, this is not yours to win really?
There's a lot of signs. First and foremost, if you're getting an RFP and you aren't a part of writing that RFP, or you don't have a relationship with the individuals who are putting that RFP out, I'd say don't even respond. It's a waste of time. That's someone else is already there driving that discussion, right? I think just in conversations and the questions, sometimes you just ask. Sometimes they'll even tell you. I think it also goes back to that ideal customer profile and that segmentation, right? And then do they fit with kind of who we want to work with? I would also say, culture even plays into that a little bit, right? Personality of the organization and who you want to work for with, on that front is pretty critical as well. And really, again, the other thing too that you've really got to act. I kind of start with this: can I make the customer successful, right? Based on what they're asking me to go do or what I think needs to be done, right? And then after I kind of make that decision or that determination, then I figure out, how do I make money doing that? How does the company make money? And then from there, how do I make that team successful, or how do I pay that team or incent that team to do good work there? So I kind of follow that pattern, if you will.
Yeah. Okay. So how do you have any secret sauce or kind of skills that you've developed over time that can ultimately lead to a touchdown with a new customer coming board?
Oh, I think it's just pattern recognition, right? Just experience doing it for so long. I think that's kind of what it takes. I think there's so many variables in our business. It's not like we're selling widgets or products, and it's here it is, and this is what it is. So, I think you really just got to engage and really, be mature enough to just tell a potential prospect or customer that you're not a good fit. Just this week, we had the same thing that happened to us. We actually, recommended a couple of our competitors because we just weren't a good fit for this customer. So at any rate, that's really, I think, there's no secret sauce, man. I wish I had, something special for you that made it easy for everybody to sell more stuff, but that just doesn't exist.
No, I don't think there's an easy way. I like what you said there about pattern recognition. It is patterns, and they generally repeat themselves, and so it's identifiable. So I think that's a good answer. Tell me about partnering with Microsoft. What are the key advantages, disadvantages? How heavily do you partner with them? How much do they play a role in your practice now, or kind of what you've experienced with engagements with them in the past? And there's no need to kind of sugarcoat anything or anything like that,
Sure. Yeah. So I've been working with Microsoft for a long time. So I've seen, all the good, the bad, and the ugly. If you're, first and foremost, if you're a Microsoft partner, then you really have no choice. It's more about how you do it and how much time you spend on it, right? So I would say, first, the key is to actually empathize with them, right? It all boils down to people in the end. And if you can add value to those people based on their goals and their aspirations, then typically they'll reward you for that. Microsoft's no different. And those Microsoft folks, specifically those in the sales roles, they're typically driven by a couple different things, right? They want to add new customers, and they want more consumption of their technology. So if you can figure out a way to do that, then they'll reward you for that. And again, there's no secret handshake or anything else. The customer is going to make the rules for the decision. So I think that's the other thing that people kind of get wrapped around the axle around. They think Microsoft dictates these things. It's actually the customer, right? Microsoft doesn't have any more power over the customer than you do. So if you're in a position to help the customer be successful with the technology and everyone involved understands that, then you're good. Right. And you're usually bulletproof at that point to any shenanigans that Microsoft would want to pull in terms of, getting another partner in there, as long as you have trust and credibility with that customer. So, and then I would also say, too, if Microsoft doesn't know you're there or that trust exists and you're not communicating effectively with them, then don't blame them for trying to insert another partner or getting in your way, right? They're just trying to do their job. So, partnerships need to be mutually beneficial. You don't need Microsoft to survive, and they sure as hell don't need you. So just add as much value to that partnership as possible. That doesn't mean doing whatever they say. That can be dangerous for you and even for them. And then also, if you can build that healthy relationship with them, then you'll get opportunities to do things in your business that wouldn't be possible otherwise.
Yeah. But isn't right now the most premium time to be a Microsoft partner? They're the highest valued company in the world. Everybody that said they were out for the count 5 years ago, the whole thing's turned around. Satya has made such a massive transformation. They're driving phenomenal revenues. And because we know so much of their revenues are driven by partner implementation, that means a lot of partners are doing a heck of a well at the moment, of backing this wonderful technology and company.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. Like I said earlier, that's why I'm back.
Yeah. Nice. Tell me about Salesforce.com. Have you competed against them? And when competing against them, if you have, how is it different than, if you like, going after a deal where another Microsoft partner is involved? So if you like, it's a frenemy as opposed to the legit enemy.
Yeah. No, so... Oh man, I could write a book on competing with Salesforce. First and foremost, I've really enjoyed competing with them over the years. Arguably, they're one of the best B2B marketing and sales organizations to ever exist. So if you're looking to benchmark your skills and kind of that arena against anyone, then they're about as good as it gets. So although I would say this, because of their size and scale right now, they're starting to get watered down in areas, but they're still a very formidable marketing and sales machine. So I would say a lot of people make mistakes when going up against them. For example, a lot of people, including Microsoft, they try to emulate them when competing against them. And that kind of makes sense in a way because they're really good at sales. So why not try to mimic their sales motions? But that also happens to be the quickest way to lose against them, right? Trying to beat them at the game they play so well, not going to happen, right? So, if you're competing against them, I've always found it really good to first understand who you're really up against and where they're at in the opportunity. After a couple of conversations, you should be able to see who their coaches and champions are within that organization. If the pursuit's being led by one of their partners and it's not an enterprise account, then often, believe it or not, Salesforce isn't in there yet. Many of their partners don't like to get them involved until towards the very end of the opportunity. It's because they can be overly aggressive in the sales process. Right. So, but, I would say this, more than likely, Salesforce is there, and they're probably the ones that cultivated the opportunity in the first place. So after you have that insight, Mark, into what they're doing and where they're positioned, then you need to do something that's pretty counterintuitive to what most salespeople learn to go do. You have to slow things down, right? That helps you out in a number of ways. It frustrates the hell out of them, which is always a good thing. And then they tend to get sloppy when things aren't moving as fast as they would like or on plan as they would like. They do stupid things like call above their people, call directly into the CEO, try to start being a little bit more aggressive than kind of unnaturally aggressive, if you will. I'd say after slowing it down, you need to do some other unnatural things like commoditizing the CRM technology, right? Especially the traditional stuff. And I know that doesn't feel right either, but the simple fact of the matter is there's probably more than likely 5 different CRM systems that'll meet the requirements of your prospect, especially if you're just talking about SFA. So don't make it, obviously sell on value. Don't make it kind of a discount to win type of thing, but that's important. I think also Salesforce overemphasizes the technology as being kind of the key to driving that prospect's success, and the solution to all of the prospects' problems. So if you start to align yourself with some really smart people in that account that know that that's simply not the case, that you simply just don't buy technology and it solves all your problems, if you help them understand that it's about how it gets implemented correctly, that will ultimately lead to their success. Unless it's an enterprise account, Salesforce is telling them that it's easy, and they don't like to talk about things outside their realm of control like process and people and data and things like that. So So I would just say do your best to make it a very logical, value-based decision. Stress the power of the platform, or kind of what we were talking about earlier, stress the power of the power platform. and then, make sure that those Salesforce coaches and champions are kind of neutralized by kind of understanding that Microsoft can do everything they can do for them, right? And they can do it at a better value. And when you start bringing in the rest of the Microsoft stack, it's often a much more complete solution.
If let's say the business that you're targeting is not predominantly a Microsoft shop, would you kind of raise that as a red flag? So they're talking to SFDC already, they're not a Microsoft shop. Would that be enough for you to go, and let's say you didn't have necessarily a compelling relationship that was already in place, would that be a red flag enough for you to walk?
Oh, yeah, I would actually run away from that as fast as possible because, first and foremost, you're starting to fight a battle that you can't win, and they're flipping the same, what I just talked about, they're probably more than likely doing the same thing to you, right? So, they've got, applications sitting on Amazon and they're running Google Apps in the background, and how are you going to tell your story in terms of how D365 fits into all of that? Right. And they're using, maybe Tableau for analytics. At that stage, you're really trying to convince them to completely change, all of their technology.
Yeah. So right. So I like that kind of move around slowing the sales process down because it frustrates them. Do you have anything else? Like that's quite a smart, tactful thing. And I've definitely seen that work. Anything else? I think you just got to kind of make a case like a good attorney makes a case, right? So, because they're going to be embedded, before you get there, typically with some key folks, and more than likely that's going to be someone on the business. And unfortunately for a lot of Microsoft partners, and Microsoft for that matter, they get stuck in IT and do not know how to have the same type of business conversation that Salesforce does, right? So you've got to, at that stage, you've got to kind of just make it a very logical case, right? And make sure that VP of sales that wants the same technology that their buddy uses understands that you can absolutely do everything that Salesforce can do. You can do it at a better value, and make sure that if you get beat, it's that VP of sales going back to their peers, that IT leader, their CEO, their COO, and saying, I want this because I just want it. You know what I'm saying? That's kind of what you got to do. Just make that case. What's the biggest risk you've taken within business, and has it paid off, or are you still learning from it?
Good question. So I would say the biggest risk that I've taken is, I left, a very comfortable W-2 world with a great company full of great people. I also have 2 small kids, and my wife started her own business as well. So I'm not necessarily sure if it has or even if it will pay off, but right now I'm having fun, and I can assure you nobody over the Spallitta house is starving, Mark. So we're in good shape there. So I'm still learning, I think, and hopefully even if all these risks pay off, I'll still continue to be learning. But yeah, I think it's not about the payoff. It's kind of more about the journey, if you will.
Nice. Is there anything else you want to add before we get on to some quick fire questions?
I think that's pretty much it, unless you have any additional questions.
No, that's great. So let's talk about some quick fire ones. So first of all, over your career, you've been to a lot of Microsoft conferences. They've gone under different names, things like that. Which one has, in your experience, for you personally, driven the highest value, or which kind of one would you go, if this conference is on in 2019, I'm attending it, so important that I'm there? What's that one?
Yeah, so, I think back in the day, it was always about convergence, right? That was the event, right? And I think that's been split up into a bunch of different events. And based on kind of, what I've seen so far, I would say it's the Microsoft Business Applications event. I was kind of surprised how well that went over, especially with how quickly it was put together by Microsoft. So that was good. And then, I'd say CRMUG, that's a really good event, and has, ever since kind of the absence of convergence has really kind of become one of the main gathering places for, people in that field. So I'd say those are the two. I mean, I attended Ignite and did some things there, but it's just, it's too much. I mean, I felt like I was at RSA, or large security conference, when I was there, So anyways, I would say it's Business Applications Summit, or whatever they're calling that, and then CRMUG.
Awesome. What's the biggest highlight across your entire career for you? It might be a war story. It might be, what's that one that you use it as a lesson to others type thing, or use it as your, backslapping opportunity every now and again?
Well, I mean, I've had a lot of good wins. I think my favorite wins are the ones that people told me that we couldn't get done, or we couldn't do. I can't name names on some of these customers, but all of these were very large implementations. So 2,000 plus users of Microsoft Dynamics CRM. One of them, I don't know if you remember a guy by the name of Eddie Marshall. He was a GM at Microsoft. I sat down in front of him one day, and he told me unequivocally that this deal I was working on was not for me, and that someone else was primed to go get it. And that I couldn't close it, and et cetera. And he even said that in front of my leadership team too. And I just politely disagreed with him. I said, we're a perfect fit for these folks. And, I know that the other partner's been working on this for a long period of time, but we're a better fit to make them successful. And we went out and got that deal done. I call it kind of the honey badger deals, right? The deals that you just want it more, so you just go get it. Those are the most fun. The other one too, a company that was getting ready to go through Chapter 7.
That's bankruptcy, right? That's bankruptcy.
Yep, that's bankruptcy in the States.
Not all the listeners are in the US.
Yep. Yeah. So at any rate, this organization, it's getting ready to become almost insolvent, and we're trying to sell 1,000 plus user deal inside of there, and people are telling us that no, that couldn't happen, and really we disagreed. We thought their situation meant that they needed us more. So we ended up kind of finding an individual, a management consultant partner at a very well-known management consulting company, and just sat down with him and just talked to him about it. And he said, yeah, you're absolutely correct. These people don't even know who their customers are, let alone where their revenue's coming from. And it's going to be very, very difficult for these folks to change things or get out of this situation scenario without that insight. So we went back to the CEO and set up a direct line of communication between us and Microsoft, and we got it done.
Nice. So good. What's the best purchase you've made under $100?
My Arc'teryx backpack. I got that one on sale for half off, and that thing has taken a beating and is very well traveled.
Hang on, what was the brand name of it?
Arc'teryx. It's a brand. I don't know if it's outside the state.
How do you spell it?
ARCTERYX. And I get a lot of my climbing gear there too, and things like that. So I mean, it's probably my favorite brand. So I love it.
Wicked. Who would you recommend as a podcast guest for the future?
I got a few different names, man, that could share some serious wisdom with you. So here are a few people that could be great. So Mike Gillis over at DXC Group. I think I already introduced him to you.
Yeah, I think we were having a drink at CRMUG when he popped by. That's right.
Yeah, super solid. Tons of wisdom. Jesse Lascalzo over at KPMG US, also very solid.
What was his last name?
Lascalzo. I'll give you their contact information if you want it. Jim Steger and Christy Reed, formerly Sonoma Partners, now E&Y. They'd both be fabulous.
I can't get Jim on the call because of they're pretty tied up with being part of a big crowd now that have certain rules in place. We've had lots of chats about it.
So maybe if you can't get Jim on, maybe Christy or Brendan, those folks. I mean, they've got a great team over there, so they would be good. Grant McLarnon, formerly ADX and Audoxio, now KPMG Canada. Very, very solid. Gary Peterson over at Hitachi. I would say, maybe other folks that I would talk to, Steve Kane and Steve Thompson from Power Objects. Also, you know who else would be good? Scott Millwood, formerly Customer Effective in Hitachi. I don't know where he's at right now, but I'm willing to bet he's working on something related to Dynamics.
Nice, nice. I'll get you to do an intro via LinkedIn to those people. That'd be grand. Nick, it's been great to have you on the show. Before you go, if people want to kind of follow what you're up to online, where can they find you?
Yeah, so you can certainly go to paretogroup.com or just reach out to me, Nick at paretogroup.com.
You've been listening to the Dynamics 365 Practice Show on the Microsoft Business Application Podcast. Please consider subscribing to the podcast on any great podcast player. Your host was Business Application MVP Mark Smith, otherwise known as the NZ365 Guy. For all the show notes or to discuss anything covered on the show, please go to nz365guy.com/70. I'll see you on the next episode.